My name is Michael Walls. If you don't know me already, I'm director of the DPU, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity to welcome you all here tonight, and also, of course, to welcome Executive Director Maimunah Mohd Sharif from UN Habitat. This is the second time we've had Maimunah with us in a couple of years, doing a talk like this, and it's a really exciting thing to be able to see that this is not just the second in two. It's a real milestone in terms of moving forward a relationship between UCL and UN Habitat. And I say that in the sense that we've just signed an agreement which will serve as a framework to establish a partnership that has a number of different angles. Of course, there's also a very deep significance from our point of view that you can see in this banner here, which is that this year, this event marks the first event in our celebration of 70 years of DPU's existence. So for us, that's a big milestone, and it's a wonderful thing. It's an honor to have with us someone as illustrious and important in actually DPU's history in terms of our relationship with UN Habitat, someone as important in that sense as the executive director of that organization. It's also significant, I think, for the executive director herself, because she's just about to finish the second of 2 terms as executive director of UN Habitat. So this is a chance for her to tell us reflectively what has happened, what the challenges and opportunities and successes and milestones have been, but also to give us a sense of what she sees ahead for herself, but also even more importantly for sustainable urban development. So once again, welcome everybody. It's really fantastic to see you here. It's a wonderful opportunity for us. I'm delighted to be having the opportunity once again to welcome Maimunah Mohd Sharif to our campus again. Now, before I hand over to Maimunah to talk to us, it's important, I was just talking about DPU, but this is not just about DPU. The MOU we just signed was with UCL, so it's important that I give Gerard Rees a few minutes to talk, to welcome us from a UCL perspective. Professor Rees is the Vice Provost for Research, Innovation and Global Engagement, which I think covers just about everything we could possibly be doing in a university. So he couldn't be...
There's the education bit.
There is the education bit, but that also connects to the whole of that sort of innovation and global engagement and all that stuff. So I think it's, there's still a connection there. But, it's wonderful to have Gerard here, and I'd just like to invite him to say a few words now before we hand over to Maimunah for her talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, and let me offer my very warm welcome on behalf of UCL to a friend and colleague, Executive Director. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have you here. It's also, for me, a pleasure and a privilege to be here participating in celebrating the DPU's 70th anniversary. That is an astonishing achievement, and many congratulations to you all. Now, I'm just a humble doctor, a neuroscientist, so what do I know about cities? Well, I came to live in one 33 years ago, this city, and have made it my home. And I sort of sit there from my perspective thinking they're simultaneously the greatest human settlements, the greatest invention of humanity, a way in which it's a boon that people of very different backgrounds can sit together, can solve problems, can create solutions. They're amazing. But they're, of course, also a bit of a curse sometimes as well, because they can entrench inequality, poverty, all of these kind of things. And at the same time, I sit there from my perspective as Vice Provost and look at urbanisation as the defining feature of our times. There are many other more slightly depressing features of our times, but clearly a time where more than half of humanity is living in cities. It's going to rise to, 80-90% by 2050. Cities and urbanisation are critically important. And so at UCL, when we think of the grand challenges that are facing us, our grand challenges we define inequalities or climate change, data-empowered societies, mental health. When we think about those grand challenges, we also have to think about them through the lens of sustainable urbanisation of cities. And so That's the lens that we need to look through it tonight, and that's why it gives me particular pleasure to welcome the Executive Director. As Michael was saying, she concludes her second and final term in a very, very short time, just a few days. But I think it's fair to say, from my reading and from my knowledge of our relationship, you have repositioned UN Habitat Human Settlements Programme as a thought leader in sustainable urbanisation, and something that advocates for the new urban agenda but contributes to those sustainable development goals and a climate action plans agreement that we all hold dear as well as you. So it's both of huge interest to us as an organisation to hear from you, but also a huge privilege to hear your thoughts as you join us on looking back and looking forward. So a warm welcome, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Michael Wall, Director of Development Planning Unit UCL, Professor Jaron Rees, Vice Provost for Research, Innovation and Global Engagement, Professor Adriana Allen, Professor of Development Planning and Urban Sustainability, Professor Mike Betty, my lecturer when I was a student in 1982 to 1985 at University of Wales Institute of Technology in Cardiff. And dear students, friends, alumni of UCL, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen who are present here and also who are online at the moment now. Actually, this is my second time here. I'm very honored to be invited by the prestigious Bartlett School to deliver a valedictory speech to commemorate the completion of my tenure as an Executive Director of United Nations Human Settlements Program. In fact, I'm very touched to be able to address this August Assembly as a Fellow of the Royal Town Planners Institute. When I was a student in UWIS, it was the student RTPI. Then I graduated, become a graduate RTPI. And I think now I'm a senior enough in terms of age. That's why they give me the honorary member of RTPI yesterday, which I regard very highly. And it's perhaps also fitting that I am giving this lecture in the United Kingdom before carrying out my final duties as the Under Secretary General at a meeting with a member state of the Commonwealth of Nations. So as the university asked to speak to the theme of looking back, I tried to look back as much as I can, and looking forward, and also as much as I can, deliver from my experience, my knowledge. Please allow me to begin with all of you some key observation of my life journey. Because with the title given, Looking Back, I cannot just look back for the past 6 years. So I want to look back as far as I remember, and I hope it won't bore you, and looking forward. In 1961, I was born in a largely rural world. So you know my age now. Like most of my generation in Southeast Asia, I grew up subsisting on the planting and harvesting of rice paddy. By the time I arrived in Bournemouth to do my A-level, 17 years later, I don't even know how to pronounce Bournemouth. I pronounce it as Bournemouth. And developing countries like Malaysia were able to narrow the gap in the gross domestic production by moving away from primary industry to manufacturing. This was achieved at the expense of the environment, the externalities for growth and development, And we were told at that time it's worth the cost. And in the 1980s, I learned the rudiments of town planning at the University of Wales Institute of Science and Technology, short form UWIS, but I think now it's already combined as the University of Cardiff. We were exposed to the idea of well-planned, well-managed, integrated cities. Would help make economic growth more stable. I'm not sure now whether you are also being taught that well-planned, well-managed, well-designed cities will be a good for the economic growth. That was what I've been taught. The catchphrase was then how important it was to build a home-owning democracy. We had unleashed in our countries the genie of urbanization, the agglomeration of capital, talent, and growth would lift millions out of poverty. Little did we know that money is one of the few things that defy gravity, and what trickled down was not wealth. You can imagine what it was that trickled down instead. Use your imagination. Upon my return to Malaysia in 1985, after the graduation, I made the first sign that reality on the ground was very different from what we learned in the lecture hall. As the Malaysian economy transitioned from primary industries to manufacturing, the job that I was trained for disappeared. I was given a scholarship to be a town planner, to plan estate. I was given a scholarship by RISDA, Rubber Industry Development Authority. I supposed to go back to be a town planner and to open a land and plan a small settlement for the rubber estate. But that's not what is reality, is what happened. Instead of holding a guaranteed job in plantation or estate management at that time, I went to the office and they gave me a brown envelope. I was so happy. I thought it's a job offer in the brown envelope. Then I opened up, they said that you have been released, you don't have to pay for the scholarship, but you are free to look for your own job. In 1985, I think you know, I'm not sure whether you are born or by that time in 1985. That is the economic recession in 1985. And I end up unemployed. Not unlike what you see now in the UK, today we face a cost of living crisis at that time due to the economic recession in 1985. Nonetheless, I found myself a job as a junior planner in the Penang Island Municipal Council. My first assignment was to help develop Penang First State Structure Plan. Professor, we learned from Cardiff. Structure plan and local plan from the Town and Country Planning Act in 1976 in Malaysia. And I was involved in the planning and also the development of Bayan Lepas, a new satellite town of service workers in the Penang Free Trade Zone. And as the West began to offshore its manufacturing to the Far East, the Malaysian economy did indeed benefit. In the next 25 years at that time, the GDP of Penang grew by 15%, double digit, year on year. And many boats were floated. Just the United Kingdom and other parts of the global north began to deindustrialize. But we just began to industrialize at that time. I was involved in the planning of the free trade zone or free industrial zone at that time. And I cannot complain too much. One of the German firm to spread its wing to Penang with the electronic giant Robert Bosch and Company. We invited a lot of, with all the free trade zone, the free incentive, we invite a lot of the big companies to set up in Penang. And some of the very talented Malaysians, educated in the West, returned to Malaysia to work as an engineer. We were all busy transforming entire communities into an assembly line to turn out the gadgets that we are all addicted to today. And many of the parts in your phone is manufactured in Penang. Yeah? And one of these smart young men asked me to marry him. In the midst of the Malaysia's van of progress. So you don't blame urbanization. I met my partner and met my husband. And I'm glad to say that I accepted his proposal. Our marriage was unusual for its time. We married across class. He is from the rich family. I'm from the poor family. That's why I received the scholarship by the Rubber Industrial Development Authority, because my parent was a rubber tapper. Married across class, across religion. I'm a Muslim. My husband is a Chinese. Malaysian Chinese, not from the China, Malaysian Chinese, Chinese in Malaysia. And also in terms of the ethnic lines, the difference in 1988. Last year, we celebrated 35 years of marriage, and we are still going strong. And we are proud grandparent of a healthy boy by the name of Johan. He's 8 months old now. We were able to get onto the property owning a ladder. A progressive and bright future felt real at that time. I'm glad to say that our children did indeed grow up in a world that is more stable compared to mine. We even beat the depletions of ozone layer. Everything was possible. So, why I share all these stories with you? If you read in between the lines, there are messages in that stories. Looking back, culture, values, it's the reality. And how can we look forward? Because we cannot leave all that in order for us to look forward. Go back to Malaysia in 2020. We got Vision 2020 was the slogan for most Malaysians. In fact, one of the tiger economies of Southeast Asia, Malaysia was graduating from the low-cost production to a service-based economy. We seem to have left the bad days of racial strife behind us. Like Michael mentioned, there's a second Malaysia plan. That one was formulated after the 1969 riot. That is due to the inequality in Malaysia. What has been a novelty, the nuclear family and living high dense and high-rise building felt like the height of modernity. Our family was no exception. The domestic economy got a boost from tourism, banking, and the provision of services. Singapore, Taiwan as a province of China, South Korea, and Malaysia formed the second line of progress with Japan in the lead. the communist bamboo curtain around coastal China was opening up, and the socialist sari curtain in India was soon to follow. Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines were all in the same trajectory of progress at that time. It was dubbed the Asian miracle, best represented by shiny new Asian cities, urban sprawl, creating megacities, and compact vertical living. In 2020, but within our capitalist dream lay the seed of its own destruction. In 1998, Asia was consumed by a financial crisis that we had not seen before. The era of boom and bust has arrived. By the time we had liberalized our economy, the Malaysian economy was among the 12th largest export-based market in the world. It's good or no good? Export-based. And at the same time, houses were no longer homes, but commodities for investment. Private debt had piled up higher than both the Twin Towers combined, as the deregulated banking industry led to lowering of the bar to personal debt accumulation. We had gone shopping for the very first time, buying cars, houses, and running up debt using the Amex credit card, Danish card, ultimately the personal credit card. You won't want to get married, you can get a loan from the bank at that time. Personal loan, they call it. So you see from the village going all the way, then things change. Both the IMF and the World Bank prescribed more liberal doses of austerity at that time. The fault, they said, lay with the weak democratic principle, and we had been a recipe, what had been a recipe for success is a strong state, 5-year plan that you see, that's not Michael, an integrated national physical plan were to blame. True capitalism was the answer, and the markets were correcting the mistake of the intervention of a strong Asian states. Asian values was no replacement for liberal exceptionalism. And in the 2000, as we all entered a new millennium, the world began to face the era of boom and bust more frequently. If it was 100 years between the tulip bust and the Great Depression, the dot-com bust came in less than a decade on the heels of the Asian financial crisis. So then in 2012, the entire Western banking system collapsed into itself. Capital control were imposed. Too big to fail. Too big to fail replaced creative destruction. Just as the ASEAN tigers turned into tame pussycats. The gods of capitalist system was found to have feet of clay. By that time, I have progressed in my career, having become the director of planning department in the year 2000, general manager of the Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2009, and the first woman president or the mayor of the Seberang Prime Municipal Council, the largest local government in 2011. You can imagine in 2011, the cities was headed by a male mayor for the past 19 years. And in 2011 came Maimunah, the first female mayor, and to head the biggest local government in Malaysia in terms of area, not revenue, area. And as you know, that is a bigger area. Of course, there are so many challenges. Of course, we still have the rural area, intermediary areas, and the cities. And we have not much, we don't have a lot of money at that time. And the city have faced a lot of challenges in terms of funding due to the, well, we need to have a transparent and accountable administration. Then, for 7 years, I was the mayor of a city before being headhunted by the United Nations to helm the UN Habitat in December 2017. Many people ask me, I would like to join UN Habitat or UN agencies. How do you get there? I don't know how either I should share with them the real process, or I should tell the truth to say that I don't apply, but I was offered. But maybe that is also not an answer. So from the very beginning, I said that I don't know. But I was a call for an interview, and then at that time in Malaysia at 12 midnight, and then in New York is in the morning, and then they offered me the job. Then, well, at that time I was around 52 years old. Also, I was thinking that rather than I've been in Penang for 30 over years. And I was a bit reluctant whether I should accept or not accept. That's this one thing. Many of my colleagues told me, I'm not sure whether it's true or not, Michael. If the job given to the man will say, yes, I want to do it. But if it's given to a woman, they'll say, I don't know whether I should go or not. But don't do like me. Because given the opportunity, grab it. That is a lesson learned. I said, I don't know whether I should attend or not. I should go or not. You know, at that time, I have 2 girls. I have 2 daughters. But I should owe this to my eldest daughter, by the name Amira. When we had our 4 of us, we have a meeting. I said, should mommy accept this offer? Then my eldest daughter said to me, mommy, you are already in Penang for the past 30 over years. You have been a mayor. And this job is given 4 years. At that time, 4 years. I was not 52, 56, sorry. 4 years term, because I didn't know it would be extended. 4 years. Do you want to retire as a mayor in Penang? You have been here for the 30 over years? Or you want to retire as a mayor of the world in the UN? Then I said, yeah, that is good things to good analysis. Why don't you go? Grab it. I said, I don't know. I'm not in the UN system. I'm outside. I don't know what it is. I don't know what is the UN. I don't know the rules and the procedures. Then they said that is the reason. Then another statement made by my husband. He said that there are billions of people in the world, and the UN chose you. I don't know how they go and look for me in Penang. They said, chose you. Don't you think there will be something that that's in you that you should be there and deliver? Think about it. I will be there to support you. Then I told him, if you are not joining me, I'm not going to take this offer. So another lesson learned. Marry a man that not clip your wing. Think harder. If you are still single, don't rush. Look for the person who don't clip your wing. If they clip your wing, then you cannot, even though you have vision, So my husband said, go ahead, and I will be there. And it happened that, that I said that the German, he studied in German, who came in. Then I said that if you don't join me in Nairobi, I'm not going to take this post. So, okay, I will join you. So he's with me for the last 6 years. So that is, I think that is very, very important. And then in one periodical, they call me, as I said, the mayor of the world. And indeed, the past 6 years since I am UN Habitat, I joined UN Habitat in 2018. 290 million people have moved from rural area into town and cities from 2018. In November last year, I'm sure you know that the global human population crossed the 8 billion marks, and 4.52 billion of us live in cities. Now I'm going into the, from the little girl, naive, and from going to the US, and then work as a planner and as a mayor. Now I would like to share with you, because looking back, now I would like to share with you the present, present towards the end of the present. And having undertaken more than 2,000 bilateral meetings for the past 6 years, having gone to 69 missions in all the region of the world, having visited some 55 countries. Maybe I should visit more, but due to the COVID-19, 2020 was locked down, then we cannot travel. I realized that the urbanization process that I experienced in Malaysia, because I don't work in any other, the whole life, 30 over years in Penang in Malaysia, was not as evenly experienced globally, although the trajectory was basically the same. I thought that the world is the same, because it's in Malaysia. Sometimes we also here, we take things for granted. When you on your tap, definitely you want to see water, but not in Burkina Faso, not in Ghana, not in Nairobi, not in South Africa. They have to queue 2 to 3 hours to get a barrel of water on their head, and mainly a woman. 2 to 3 kilometers, and they have to pay more than the normal tap water. And this is the opportunity cost. Women and also the children queue for the very basic services, water, in part of the most urbanized, in terms of the rate of urbanization in Africa, the highest, and also in Asia. And at the same time, the exception being the pace of the urbanization is now very rapid. In many parts of the world, cities are overwhelmed by the sheer number of rural-urban migration. In these places, a person of my background and economic origin would stand almost no chance to get a roof over her head. The gap is too big. The poor, the have, and the have-not. Education in such circumstances is not a solution. I remember in March 2018, I went to Kibera. I think maybe of you know the Kibera, one of the largest slum in Kenya and in Africa. For me, I realized that education changed my life, because in the village, I have a house of myself. I mean, my family's house. I have a roof on my head, even though there is no basic facilities at that time. There is no water. I mean, the tap water, no electricity. I have to use the kerosene lamp. I got to walk to school. I got to wake up early in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning to help my father to tap rubber before I go to school. But I have the opportunity to go to school. I thought that education actually changed my life. But when I mentioned this to a boy in Kibera, I said that education will change your life. From my experience, this boy stand up and said that, no, I disagree totally with you. They call me ED, Executive Director, because it's quite difficult to call Maimunah, so ED. He said that is ED, I don't agree with you. I said, then what is the real answer? He said, to him, he said that I need a home in order to allow me to study. That hit me to say that, yes, no wonder my husband said that of all the people that chose me, because the mandate of UN Habitat is shelter, housing, shelter. You said, if no home, how can you expect me to study? I cannot live under the tree, under the shade, in order for me to study. So I think this is really is wake up call for me. That's why I really look into the housing as one of the priority in UN Habitat. So now I think that is all the stories from the village up to the UN. Now let us look forward. I'm sure now you are in the era of people used to say 4 C's, era of 4 C's. Era of, I'm not sure whether I should say that after COVID-19, I don't know whether it's still COVID, but some areas still have COVID, climate change, urban crisis, and crisis of capital everywhere. Yeah? So, let us now look forward. By the year 2030, 3 billion people, about 40% of the world population will need adequate housing. That is the statistic that when we had the report on the SDG 11, when I presented to high-level political forum in New York, the title of the report is to rescue SDG 11. SDG 11, as you know, is for cities and human settlement. And it isn't just a figure, it is an alarming fact that needs our quick attention and coordinated response. I think that's why in the high-level political forum in New York last year, in July, during the press conference, I gave a press conference in New York. If we have a Paris Agreement on climate, why can't we have a Paris Agreement on housing? Or maybe it's a London Agreement on housing, I don't know. You know, why can't we have that? Because, and you look into housing, when you talk about housing, it's not only a building. To me, it's a nucleus. When you have a house, to build the house, you have so many compartments, so many materials, and this will create a job for the small SME or small medium enterprise, create job in order to build the house. And then now with all those local material, nature-based solution, reducing the carbon emission, maybe you're new thinking how to build a house rather than importing all the material. When you build a house, a home, it's not enough just to be big a roof on the head. They will link to health facilities, linked to education, it's linked to public transport, infrastructure, linked to water, electricity, linked to culture. So you just name it. So I think this is the reason why when we are experiencing a cost of living crisis, I think this is because most of our disposable income go towards putting a roof over our head. And in the developing world, the housing deficit translates into, if you want to reduce this gap, we need to build 96,000 new affordable and accessible housing units every day. Wow, that is a business. Those who are thinking about being a developer or this is business. 96,000 units per day. If you want to house all these people, the global population up to 2030. And as I mentioned earlier, that people living in slum pay up 8 times more for access to shelter, basic services like water, and in more cases, breathe in air that is 10 times more polluted. So they are also living in their own waste. In 2020, the world generated 2.3 billion tons of municipal solid waste, of which almost 40% is managed in uncontrolled facilities, predominantly open dump site. Another business opportunity. When there is a challenge, there's a business opportunity. Be creative. The ED said that is around 40% is not managed. How can I come up with a solution to manage this solid waste or even the unmanaged waste? It's another good opportunity for all of you. And at the same time, in a case that we have forgotten, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we asked the people to stay at home, locked down. If you have no home, where are you going to stay? Locked down, stay at home, don't move, but we have no home. That is another. Without adequate housing, the virus spread more rapidly and the communities faced with unequal access to basic services. We even asked, I also actually have a video message and taking a video how to wash our hand properly. Yeah, you wash this way, you go like that, you go like that, you go like that, and then wash. And sometimes we even sing birthday song so that you wash properly. But if you don't have water to drink, do you think you want to wash your hand and sing a birthday song? No. And I also been asked, said that, ED, don't do that, don't show the video. We are here, we don't even have water to drink. And you ask us to sing along the birthday song, to wash your hand, use soap. You don't even have water. So I think this is also very, very important, because housing and basic services must now be provided not just for housing needs, but for the first line of defense against the many issues facing the world today, and especially the imminent threat of climate change. And more than just a place called home, housing is a basis to maintain our dignity, health, livelihood, well-being, and impact of our environment. And we must acknowledge that the housing crisis presents an opportunity, as I said just now, to address climate-related issues more successfully. I also want to hear your point afterwards, whether you agree with me or not. Currently, the building and the construction sector account around 40% of energy and process-related carbon dioxide, or CO2. 11% of which resulted from manufacturing, building material, and products such as steel, cement, and glass. Another opportunities. How can you look into an innovation of green material? Because construction produces 40% of carbon emission, CO2. So the state of the matter must change. And you are the change agent, and we continue to be the change agent. And I met a group of youth students at World Economic Forum last year. And they said, "Oh, ED, can we take a photograph?" I said, "Yeah." "Which group are you?" We are the youth shaper. I think shaper, shaper. I said that youth shaper is not enough. Huh? Then what should we call our group? You should shape and shake. We also be shaker. Not only to shape, you have to shake and then you shape. So I said, now we should call our group SNS. shaker and shape. I said, yeah, you please do. So I think you are, and of course at my age and many of the senior here, we will continue, but you are the change of agent, and you are the shaper, and you are the shaker. So I think what is very important is that we need to reshape our cities. We have to go back to basic what we learned, with what I learned in Cardiff. Well-planned, integrated, and well-managed cities. We have to make our cities right in order to reduce or mitigate the climate change. You cannot, I believe in it, we cannot just tackle the climate problem in isolation. We need to link it to sustainable urbanization. We need to look back to very basic to make our cities right. Because you don't make your cities right, that's why you have flooding, because the drainage is not right. That's why you have a lot of pollution, because you are on promoting cars instead of public transport, something like that. I think this is very, very important. And then at the same time that the action are not just necessary, but also very crucial for all of us. And at the same time, I would like to recall the member states approved a resolution, 193 member states approved a resolution in June this year, in the second UN Habitat Assembly, calling for the realization of adequate housing for all. Government has expressed the need to ramp up action to address rising crises. This is why I recently launched our global campaign in Dubai during COP28, Housing Matters campaign, and at the same in the American University in Dubai recently. And it would be remiss for me not to address the big elephant in the room. Just as the Secretary General has called for a more just economic system, we need to campaign for a just transition when addressing climate change. The housing crisis is manifestation of an unfair economic system resulting in slum in developing countries and homelessness in many developed economies. I was invited to attend G7 meeting twice. First one in Potsdam, second in Takamatsu. I was quite pleasantly surprised that the G7, the first priority that they want to address is housing. I thought this housing is a problem of the least developed countries or developing countries or small island developing state, but also the developed, the G7, they have the communique. You can look into the G7 communique. Top is priority is housing. And I also would like to stress that when we look into the cities, is also the forefront of the man-made disaster. That's why I stress the word man-made for the major wars and conflict around the world are indeed led, fought, and perpetrated by men. Not women, by men. And there is something fundamentally wrong with the current multi-level system when women and children are bombed, killed, raped, and maimed on a daily basis without recourse to justice. In such situation, UN Habitat is there to provide whatever little support we can do with very limited resources. We are in Afghanistan, we are in Iraq, we are also now open up our office in Ukraine, and we are in many of these crises, even in Africa, in Somalia. We have an office, in small office in Sudan. And to date, the United Nations have lost more than 150 colleagues in Gaza. And the biggest loss of life of the United Nations in our 79th year. Indeed, the United Nations was not set up to bring about heaven on earth, but to prevent hell on earth. I'm not sure that we are permitted to do so, to prevent hell on earth, when the blue flag no longer provide us with the shelter and protection that we need to carry out our duties. And in the urbanizing world, as I said just now, facing the forces, including the combined crisis of conflict, climate-related disaster, COVID-induced economic inequalities, and crisis of capital, we need a strong and effective United Nations. Indeed, in the ministerial declaration of the second UN Habitat Assembly in June this year, and again at COP28, stronger multilateral action means working together as nations, better multi-level cooperation within nations, and more empowered civil society involvement in translating policy into practice through all the society approach of getting things done. My colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am an eternal optimist. If I'm not optimist, I dare not stand here and share my experience with you. You cannot blame me for being so, because as urbanization has served me and my country well. My only key message today to all of us is to call upon all of us as individuals. You are a leader in your own right, as an individual, as leader in our own right, to harness our God-given talent, to take action now to make sure we leave this world a better place than we found it. And I'm glad to say that with the support of my team in UN Habitat, we have contributed positively to the 600 cities and 800 million people that UN Habitat served during my term in office. And I hope that the new executive director will continue, because our target is 1 million cities, 1 billion lives. We want to touch, we want to make a difference. And not only is the program stronger financially in terms of governance, the voices of our stakeholders are heard at the G7, G20, G77 in China, the United Nations General Assembly, and the World Economic Forum in Davos. My only plea to all of you, including me, is not to give up. But we need to double up our effort to get women and girls at the center. I'm the international gender champion, by the way. I've been instructed by the Secretary General to have this, to be international gender champion. To ensure that we have more, we have more women-led cities. Do you agree or not? Do you agree or not? Yes. No, yes. Well, women-led cities, and not to repeat the mistake made by my generation. We, together with with the businesswoman from Brazil, if you can Google Luiza, what is his name? Luisa Trajano. We started women-led cities. We want to increase. We have 50% of the world population of women. But it's only, I think, 20% of the world leaders, the countries led by women. And then it's, I don't know how many percent, 2%, Katarina? That is, where's Katarina? How many percent is the only 5% is of mayors led by women, and only how many 2%? 8% of the Fortune 500 companies led by women. So I think we need more women. And we have a chance to do so for you, to record your declared action at the 12th session of World Urban Forum in Cairo from the 4th to the 8th of November this year. And the theme of the World Urban Forum this year is that it all starts at home. You see? Still home. It's all start at home. Local action for sustainable cities and communities. In the UN language, localization of the 169 target of the SDGs. It also gives me a great pleasure to acknowledge the support of the Sustainable Cities and Communities Foundation and the University of College London for organizing today's event here in this chemistry lecture hall. This again shows the demonstration of a power of small, demonstrating what we can achieve as an individual, what we can achieve as a community, what can we achieve as a nation. And indeed, we need to look back in order to look ahead, to ensure that we do not repeat the mistake of the past. We need to learn about history in order to plan our future. And that aligns well with the title of the talk today, Looking Back and Looking Forward. As we embark on the building smart and digitally integrated life, we must make sure it is people-centered, not vendor-driven. Put people at the center, not vendor-driven. Even at one time you become a businessman who want to solve the problem of rubbish in one country, maybe in one city, talk to the people. That is more sustainable. And students, colleagues, never forget to think out of the box. Indeed, throughout my career, Neil sometimes not agree with me, sometimes he agree. Neil is my special advisor. I always ask my team and friends to think without box. I said, no, we have to think outside the box. We still have the box. But I said, no, think without box. The sky is the limit. And only then can one truly get the best ideas and stay ahead of the curve. And let me end this talk with a simple call to action that I believe giving meaning to life. I would like to end, always aspire to inspire before you expire. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time and opportunities given to me by UCL and Patli. Thank you so much, Maka. Thank you so much. Thank you.
A big thank you to Maimunah. I think she deserves another round of applause. Thank you for an inspiring talk. I was a little worried that you felt you needed to apologize to me for arguing that there should be more women leaders in the world. I have to say that being a man doesn't mean you can't agree with that sentiment. I think it's important to underline that. Actually, some of us are actually supportive of that idea actively. And I would like to endorse that,
yes, thank you.
sentiment very strongly. We're now going to, I'm now going to invite Professor Adriana Allen to respond to Maimunah's comments. After Adriana speaks, we will have some time, I hope we'll have a little bit of time for some discussion, for some questions and answers. There are people online as well. I see that there's one question online. Anyone that's listening online to this, please do post your questions if you have them in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to them. So I'd like now just to hand over to Adriana. Thank you very much, and looking forward to what you've got to say. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Wow, how much chemistry in this room. Very appropriate. I want to remind us again that Maimunah started as Executive Director ED of UN Habitat in 2018 as the first Asian woman, but as she said, also as a former mayor. I have met many times Maimunah over the last 4 years, and she always says, once a mayor, always a mayor, but now a mayor of the world.
Thank you.
I think that what is important in that remark is to appreciate that in her period with UN Habitat, Maimunah clearly brought a number of skills, insights, experiences and qualities that are very much connected with the direct experience of being in direct contact as a local authority with your constituencies. And you can see that in much of the work she did, and I want to congratulate you again for all the internal strength that you brought to UN Habitat at a very difficult, that wasn't in an easy shape, let's say, when you took over, financially and organizationally, but also for its external impact. Now, instead of reacting to your comment, or commenting on your presentation, when Michael asked if I could just say a few words today, I couldn't help myself. I'm thinking about this very unique opportunity of taking this as a bit of an interview.
Yes,
so I have been a bit naughty, and I have prepared a very brief, because if I don't write, I talk too much, so a very brief interview, which I would like to frame. And in interviewing you, I just want to put a few questions forward to you, because I think that is extraordinarily unique, this possibility of having you in the room and having these extraordinary insights that you can offer towards the future of UN Habitat. So in a way, I would like to take this personal journey that so kindly and generously you share with us to more of an institutional journey, and think a bit, look a bit back and to look forward in terms of the role and the capacity of UN Habitat, not only in tackling, in supporting an urbanizing world, but a world that, as you put very eloquently, is also heralded by unprecedented inequality, levels of conflict, and the climate emergency, just to name a few of the things that are ahead of us. So, to do that, I think that it's quite important, first of all, to remind ourselves that, of course, the future of UN Habitat is very much dependent on the way in which the full UN system evolves to become more accountable, more agile, and fit for purpose vis-a-vis the poly-crisis we face. In thinking about the role of UN Habitat in engaging with these challenges that Maimunah talked about, I think it might be valuable to briefly recall its own history. As we know, the program was established 45 years ago in 1977 as an outcome of the first United Nations Conference on Human Settlements held in Vancouver in 1976. It is also worth remembering that when UN Habitat was set up, it wasn't a program, it was initially a center, and it was in that sense very much dependent of UNEP, and that meant that it had much less independence in terms of organizing its own affairs and its own direction. It's only in 2002, I believe, that UN Habitat became a program and gained that autonomy. Now, what is perhaps more important is that its creation took place in a context where the urban question was perceived by the multilateral system as a marginal one. And I think that we have to remember ourselves of that. I mean, we hear very often about why is UN Habitat a small agency, why doesn't it have more power and so on, and we do need to think and consider that history and where the urban question has been floating around or not at all within the UN system, which still remains a problem in many ways. We know that since its establishment in 1945, the United Nations system's conception of the urban has evolved significantly. But yet for many years, the dominant conception of urbanization that was advocated by governments and international agencies was one that regarded this process as temporary and largely as a negative phenomenon. And we do need to recognize that there are still elements of that negative perception and misconception of what urbanization means and entails still with us. This perspective was strongly influenced by former colonial policies in the late 19th and early 20th century. I think that this is also very important to remember. Yeah? The structure of the UN and the continuity in many ways in terms of legacies, colonial legacies. And these legacies were very much reinforced by concerted efforts to keep rural dwellers in agricultural productive areas while passively seeking to lessen cities' impact on the environment. This was a story of where cities were for quite long. I finished my degree in architecture and urbanism around the same time as Maimunah, and still that was very much a question on the margins. Now, documented insights emerging in the 60s, many of which come particularly from Latin American cities and from the work of Sean Turner, of which we are going to talk tomorrow, all welcome, show that working with the urban poor to address the housing and livelihood needs and aspirations was far more effective in facilitating urban integration than large-scale and top-down interventions. While Habitat 1 in 1976 reflected some of this shift in perspective, its final document still shows elements of a strong anti-urban bias. And we can see that, for instance, on the emphasis on curbing rural to urban migration, achieving rural development equilibrium, and a similar type of language and objectives. In contrast, 20 years after Habitat 2 in 1996, that is the second major of Global Housing and Shelter Convention held in Istanbul, put forward participatory planning and management as critical to tackle the housing crisis and to reconceive previous policy failures. Next in the history of key international milestones shaping the scope and orientation of UN Habitat was the UN summit that many of you, or some of you might remember, in the year 2000, which resulted in the adoption of the Millennium Development Goals, or so-called MDGs. While there was no MDG at the time dedicated to the urban question or to cities, there were many targets and indicators somehow related to them in terms of or connected to the conditions in the slums, water and sanitation, access to water and sanitation, and also we need to remember that this was very much reinforced by Chapter 21 of Agenda 21, which put forward the idea that any global agenda had to be localized for it to work. So this is not a new idea, this is something that really comes back from the year 2000. Yet, the underlying framing of urbanization in these documents still largely approached the housing crisis through the treatment of what was defined at the time as its primary symptom, the slum. This derogative framing was increasingly challenged over the years by a broader human rights-based definition of adequate housing, adding some critical considerations. And because the UN is very much the custodian of human rights, I think that it's quite important to make more explicit this dialogue between what UN agencies do and what they need to do to prevent hell on earth, but also to bring and build paradise on earth. Here it is important then to remember that although adequate housing was recognized as part of the right to an adequate standard of living in as early as 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in the 1966 International Covenant on Economic, Cultural, Social and Cultural Rights, it was not until the 90s that the characteristics of what the right to adequate housing means were spelled out. And this happened in 1991 with committees, one of the UN Committee's General Comments, number 4, on the right to adequate housing, and another one, General Comment number 7, only issued or approved in 1997 on forced evictions. What these documents established were 4 key principles or considerations that are central to the work of UN Habitat and to a more progressive perspective on inclusive and sustainable urbanization. And I want to just spend a few minutes to remind ourselves of those 4 principles that still run as rules. First, that the right to adequate housing contains freedoms, including protection against forced evictions. Second, that the right to adequate housing also contains entitlements, including security of tenure, housing, land, and property restitution. Let's think about climate change, climate displacement, and conflict displacements. Equal and non-discriminatory access to adequate housing, and participation in housing-related decision-making at all levels, national and local. We are talking about principles that were endorsed in 1991 and 1997. Third, the recognition that, as John Turner would say, housing must provide more than just 4 walls and a roof, and must therefore guarantee security of tenure, availability of services, adequate materials, facilities, and infrastructure, affordability, habitability, accessibility, and location and cultural adequacy. And fourth, that protection against forced evictions is a key element to the right to adequate housing. Maimunah, in your 2023 end of the year message, you define housing as our collective failure over the past 70 years. Here is my first question. What is required from UN Habitat to support the realization of the right to adequate housing in light of current trends that you so well describe of massive forced evictions, unaffordability, and also hyper-financialization? Let me move a bit further. If we follow with trajectory of key milestones framing the work of UN Habitat, I think that it's also key to highlight the progressive agenda that was advanced through the adoption of a new urban agenda in Quito in 2016 at the 3rd Habitat conference. The new urban agenda marked the UN's recognition of urbanization as a permanent driver of development with potentially positive impacts on people and the planet, and this happened for the first time. But also an explicit commitment to advancing not just housing rights, but also collective rights, the collective right to the city. This is the language, these are the commitments that we find in the new urban agenda. The adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a few months earlier in 2015, represents another key shift from a reactive to a proactive and forward-looking approach to sustainable and inclusive urbanization and development, as we know with a specific goal, SDG 11, that pave the road to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. 2015 also saw the adoption of a Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction for the period 2015 to 2030, the Addis Ababa Convention on the Financing of Development, and, as Maimunah reminded us, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. All 3 documents acknowledging the potential consequences and responsibilities inherent in urban development. We are talking about quite a recent history, quite a recent memory in which we are talking about cities and urbanization in quite a different light. In this context, national urban policies became a 21st century must-have, although progress on this front was and has been quite slow. While by 2016 only 9 countries had implemented national urban policies, during Maimunah's office mandate, UN Habitat played a key role in supporting a large number of countries in developing their own national urban policies. In this regard, your national urban policy program placed particular emphasis on integrating sustainable food systems, on mainstreaming migration and displacement in urban policy, but also on the adoption of smart cities approaches. And it is here where I would like to pose a second question, Maimunah. Given the tensions that we encounter on the ground between the pursuit of smart cities and the realization of habitat-related human rights, what explains this emphasis of UN Habitat on the promotion of smart cities? Furthermore, much of the world seems to be still underprepared or ill-equipped to implement SDG 11, that, as you well highlighted, needs more than acceleration, needs rescue, just as many other SDGs. Whether it is at the national, subnational or global level, many argue that this is because the constitutional and legal mandates, the institutional capacities, and the human and financial resources required to implement this goal are at best weak and at worst contradictory. Moreover, while much emphasis has been placed on the localization of the 2030 agenda, urbanization is also about more than localization. It calls upon space and place-based strategies, but also about wider strategies than those that can be implemented at the local level. In this regard, I would like to pose my third question, which is what actions should UN Habitat take to pave the road to accelerate the full and meaningful implementation of the SDG 11? And how do you see the question of inclusive, just and sustainable urbanization fitting or featuring or being treated and framed in the post-SDG agenda? Fourth, and to conclude, current international frameworks and agendas involve a much wider range of actors than the United Nations itself. This is something that also Maimunah acknowledged very clearly. In this regard, we witness somehow across the UN a marginalization of local governments and also of organized civil society from the core decision-making spaces of the UN and its agencies. But we also witness a rising feminist movement, of which Maimunah is a clear exponent, calling for the redefinition of truly inclusive urban development and a new form of multilateralism, and at the same time, a shift in capitalist accumulation strategy to something that is clearly taking the shape of extractivist forms of urbanizations. As these trends are rescaling power relations and altering the domains in which negotiated policies take place and UN Habitat operates, this is my last question. What are your recommendations to the incoming ED to democratize the space within UN Habitat for meaningful participation and for advancing a feminist perspective to tackle the increasing commodification of urban life? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adriana. That's why taking feedback and comment and question from a professor is very difficult to answer. Yes, thank you so much for your very clear and in a way that is from the you taking into account from the formation of UN Habitat until now, as you put clearly, as you clearly said that is in 1976 we just a center, and then in 2002 it was a program, and then as I mentioned earlier, that I'm not from the UN internal UN agencies, that I'm from outside that joined UN Habitat, and when I mentioned this to the Secretary General, I said that I don't know about UN. He said that is you are not knowing UN is not your weaknesses, it's your strength. I said, okay, every time I'm down, I feel down, I always remember this statement. Maimunah, it's not your weaknesses, it's your strength. Let's do it. Yeah, but when I joined in UN Habitat, I think you also know that at that time we were in the deficit. I mean, you know that is the organization of UN is we are funded by the member state. We are created by the member state. The member state fund us for our work, and then we have one what do you call it? In terms of the funding, they call it voluntary contribution. Because I want to answer your the first question. and dealing with the member state. And I think one of the things that I put forward is at that time during my first town hall meeting. I remember it's around 28th of 28th of January, something like that, because I came in on the 20th. And I put forward, because I've been trained in my whole life to have to be competent, to be accountable, to be transparent, to be effective, and to be efficient. And I remember one of my colleagues said that, okay, Cathy, because you know UN, they have a lot of acronym. Cathy, CATEE, competent, accountable, transparent, effective, and efficient. So through that, and another areas is that trust. You bring back trust, and we have to, when we do our work, we need to get to the trust of the member state. And one of the member state told me that, Maimunah, bring back the trust to the organization. That's why if you see my 6 years report card, maybe you can have the book, Neil. That's why I put in building bridges, and the trust. This you can. Sorry, I don't have a copy. You can have it. You can download from our website. This is my report card to you. I'm accountable to you. I'm the international civil servant. I'm accountable to everyone. So this is the report card from 2018 to 2023. What is for the past 6 years. And one of the areas is that if you don't have received the trust, you don't get the trust from the people that you serve, it's very difficult. So one area is to bring back the trust. And then we also bring back the morale of my colleagues. And I believe in bottom up. I believe in also top bottom. Because if you have bottom up, you have no vision, you're also going nowhere. I believe in bottom up. I believe in top bottom and convergence of ideas in the middle. As well, sometimes that is to me, it works. But to some people might be doesn't work. You just be like dictator. I want you to do this. Either you like it or not. This is my priorities. But I put forward this concept. I think this is also very important to gain back the support from my colleagues, to be together with me. So I think that is one area that we would like to share with you, how we build back. We used to say build back better. How can we build back better our organization? By getting back the trust and putting back, and of course it's 6 years, but I'm very happy to share with you, Professor Adrina and colleagues, that in 2018, the portfolio of UN Habitat was 240 million. But now, you can see from the report, we are 1.1 billion US dollar, our program on the ground. And from negative 8 million in terms of the core contribution from the member state, we are now 6 million surplus. It's not much, but we are already on the blue, not on the red. With that, I think we can, the moment you get back the trust from the member state and the people that we serve, not only member state, from the stakeholders, from the donors, from the philanthropists, and even from the NGOs and international organizations, then we can build up the strategic plan. We put up the strategic plan approved by our Habitat Assembly in 2019. From there, when we was approved in 2019, we were very ambitious, without knowing that 2020 COVID-19. So that is also a downfall that but to a certain extent, due to the nature of UN Habitat's work, our portfolio in 2020 increased by 10%. Because why? we are very humble. We are dealing with the very basics of a human right. Water, providing electricity, providing sanitation. And during COVID, this is what is needed in many parts of the world, especially in Africa, in Asia, and also in developing countries. That's where the member state manage or have the trust to put forward their funding for us to implement our program, the very basic, humble program on the ground. That is stipulated in our strategic plan. To reduce poverty, to link between rural and urban, and the three outcome is the affordable housing, basic services, and urban regeneration. So I think that is very important to share together with you. But of course, as you mentioned, Trina, in 1996, we had the Habitat 2 in Istanbul. And that's where the resolution or the outcome of the Habitat 2 is on sustainable urbanization and housing. 1996, we're already talking about housing. And I want to link to your question, why is it failed? The global policy, the failure of the global policy when you link to housing. In my message, if you read my 2023 year-end message, and also in the CTM paper today, came out. And if we really discuss about this in 1996, and now to 2024, why we still face this problem? Why the slum was not there 2-3 years ago? Why we're still, instead of having reduced slum, but we now more than 1 billion slum globally. And we keep on, I think, easiest way of excuses, COVID-19. COVID-19, if it's not because of COVID-19, can we solve this problem? COVID-19 it's only happened in 2020. But the housing issues has been discussed in Istanbul during Habitat 2 in 1996. So I think this is very important for us to look that when you talk about policy, yes, some countries, they don't even have the housing policy. That's also one of the challenges that we face. Don't talk about policy, don't even have the housing policy. They don't even have the data. They don't even know how many people without housing, with what type of housing, the needs of the country. They don't even have. I think this is also maybe when we already signed the agreement today, this afternoon. Maybe it's one area for collaboration between you and Habitat. And it's a data. Yes, we say data is everywhere. But data without a suitable analysis, it won't become information. It become a data. Yes, it's a data, but you need to analyze in order for you to get an information, to use that information to make an informed decision. So, but data is not there. And don't talk about the housing policy or a new urban policy. For example, like in Quito, the new urban agenda, one of the areas that we need to do, or the member state need to do, is new urban. Is a new national urban policy, or do you have the National Urban Forum to formulate the national urban policy? And you will be surprised. In 2022, we had the high-level meeting on the 28th of April 2022. It's only 48 countries submitted to us the new urban agenda report. So, what's the problem? Is that they don't implement the new urban agenda, or they couldn't care less? So the analysis during that new the high-level meeting in New York, that on the 28th, is that yes, many countries implement the new urban agenda whether they knowingly or not knowingly. They implement, but they don't have the capacity to prepare the report. They don't have the capacity or indicators or framework to collect data to prepare the new urban agenda report to submit to us. And the next reporting will be 2026. the next reporting. And I hope that we can increase by 50% from what we have in 2022, 48. And maybe this is also maybe one of the tasks of the new ED, when you ask me to link to the last task, because due to that there was one resolution, one agenda in the executive board meeting, not resolution, one agenda in the executive board meeting recently to ask us what are the obstacles for this country to implement, to submit the new urban agenda report. Even one topic discussed in our executive board and ask us to look into why this thing happened. So that thing that is, and to me, is that whether is it they need a leadership who understand and also who believe in sustainable urbanization. Then, because I realized that after 1 year plus, I attended the General Assembly every September. Then I realized that they talk about Paris Agreement. The member state, when they give their national statement, they talk about Paris Agreement, they talk about Sendai Framework, they talk about resilience. But why nobody talk about new urban agenda? So that's from the high-level meeting in April 2022. So for to have that, I think this is one area that we need capacity, and the leaders are committed to implement what is the new urban agenda. Because this new urban agenda was endorsed in Quito by all the member states, 196. But not only the leaders, it's all of us. I think that is even in the university, in also in the private sector. So how can we link between this? So I'm not sure whether maybe that is either will become a syllabus, a new urban agenda about the urbanization. I think that is also important. And then is when you look into you asked me also regarding the smart city. In 2019, we already had our flagship program. We are aware about this coming, and we had the flagship program, which we believe in people-centered smart city. I remember when we had the discussion, many of my colleagues and also the member states, why we should do only smart city. But I believe that I say that bottom up, top bottom, convergence of ideas. I believe that we need to put people at the center when you talk about technology. So, and then when you put in the people-centered smart city, we put in people at the center, then we will include the word privacy. The data, the safety of the data that we share together in this. And we are now, they have one resolution on people-centered smart city in the last Habitat Assembly, and for UN Habitat to draw or to formulate the global guideline on people-centered smart city to be presented to the Habitat Assembly in 2025, May 2025. This is also another task for the coming ED. So, and last, when you mentioned about inclusivity and SDG 11, I think it's because when you talk about cities, it's very complex. That's why we have to look into the software and the hardware of the cities, and in order to be inclusive. It's easy to say that leaving no one behind, leaving no place behind, but are we really implement it? That's why I would like to suggest that when we have the national urban policy, we have to translate it into spatial plan. We need to, from the spatial plan, you have to align it with the physical plan in order to implement it. So I think I also shared this with the RTPI yesterday. When you do the plan for the city, what is the gross development value of your plan? what are the costs of the externalities if this plan is to be implemented to the local authority, to the people. Don't just color the plan and hand over to the local authority and then you forget about it. Or don't build the city, don't build the house, you hand over the key, then you forget about it. What is the cost of maintenance? What is the after the plan been implemented? I think this is also very important. And last but not least, the incoming AD. I also would like to whether it's a he or it's a she. I hope that she will continue the work that me together with my team, what we achieve now is not only me, it's together with all my colleagues. And hopefully that my colleagues also will help me to continue the work, the good work that we have been achieved, and so that we can get a greater height. And if any time that he or she would like to get some feedback or some something that is why Maimunah you do this, why Maimunah you do that, he or she can feel free to call me, because I will also share my email and also my phone number. So to the new ED, be open, positive thinking, and listen and listen and listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. We're out of time on the schedule. Fortunately, we're not about to get kicked out of the room, but I understand that people need to leave. So if you do, go ahead, just keep it quiet. We will keep going for a few more minutes, and there's time just for one round of questions if anyone has any. There's one question online, so I'll also ask that in a moment. But just give us time to organise the microphones here. I'm going to hand over to Elwan, who's very kindly agreed to run around the room. We'll take 3 questions, Sue. First, I can see two hands there. If there's a third one there, well, Elwan, find a third one if they want to. Do you mind unclipping yours? We'll have to pass between us. Yeah, if you just unclip, we can speak it into it, hold it in the hand. Because we have to use that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm just going to sit here, because I'll read out this when we get to it, but I'll give you a chance to answer.
Okay, no problem.
So, if you're leaving, can you just quietly move out? Otherwise, if you can sit down again, and we'll give a chance for the people that are asking questions to ask. So just maybe let them go. Yep, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Maimunah.
Where is it?
Enjoyed your presentation.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
Really appreciated your insights.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Sharon and I'm studying urban economic development.
Sharon.
Master's here. So, you mentioned your initiative on women-led cities.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded really interesting to me, and I was curious to know if health is part of that discourse when discussing the future of our cities. There is the argument that our cities and our lifestyles are not actually conducive to human health, and what part of that conversation includes women in this initiative. Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Can we have there was someone in the middle there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maimunah. Lovely to see you again.
Do introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm a Bartlett alumni, and I did work with UN Habitat, currently working for the UK government. My question really alludes to what you were touching on at the very end, which is that top-down and bottom-up coming together, because I have had a chance to work top-down and to see through what it means to set impressive targets and agendas and policies at an international, national level. I now have an opportunity to work bottom-up and see through the delivery of those, but sadly I'm not seeing the two sides coming together sufficiently. So my question really is about if you could give us concrete examples of what that looks like and what UN Habitat can do more in the future in that respect. I am aware that at COP28 there was the launch of CHAMP, the Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership for Climate Action, with 71 signatories. I'm wondering if the UN Habitat is engaged in that. I know GCOM is, so if you could elaborate on that, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Is there one more question? There's a, go there. Oh, sorry, we can take both. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Maimunah, for the presentation. Also, hearing you for the second time.
Introduce yourself.
I am Yumika Koya, an alumni of the DPU and also working as a consultant at Arab just down the road. As you mentioned in your presentation, there are many challenges that cities are experiencing, and of course with that comes business opportunities to respond to those challenges. But at the same time, there are issues of the financialization of basic services as part of these opportunities, which can contribute to the worsening of cost of living crises and the crisis of capital, as you mentioned. So how can the private sector, I guess, respond to these challenges, be part of the solution, and be effective as well as ethical? What is the role of the private sector in actually addressing some of these challenges? Thank you.
That's great, thanks. And let's just take that last one from the guy there.
Hi, I'm Herschel. I'm a final year undergraduate student studying architecture. My question is about architects in the field, and generally, have you encountered many architects working in humanitarian practice? And what do you think is the importance of architectural design and practice within UN Habitat's organization? And also, do you see architects playing a greater role in UN Habitat in the future?
Great, thank you. So if I can hand over to Maimunah, starting with women-led cities in the is health part of that discourse.
Thank you so much for that question, Sharon, the women-led cities. As I mentioned in the statistic just now in my presentation, is that women is at least half of the global population, but the participation in economic, social, and physical and psychological is not that really good in terms of the statistic. And being as the first female mayor in Malaysia and also in Penang, and then at the same time the first from the Asia to head this UN Habitat, and I'm also as the international gender champion, and the Secretary General is also putting very strong on gender equality and also a gender balance and regional balance in our work, not only in terms of the staff, it's also on work. That's why in our strategic plan in UN Habitat, we take gender as not as one box. We put gender and women as cross-cutting issues, cross-cutting in all the work that we are doing. Either is it normative or preparation of the guideline, is also the work on the ground. So when we look at the statistics, we realize that the participation of women in development and also in peacekeeping is very less. So that prompts us to launch these women-led cities. It's not only to have the mayors, more women mayors, but it's also in all level of activities. It can be from communities, stakeholders can be mayors. So, but at the moment now, it's only 5% of the cities led by women. And I believe that as an urban planner by myself, if a city is planned for women, it's a city safe for all. If it's safe for women, it's safe for men. So I think we at the same time, for the women-led cities, is not only in UN Habitat. We also work together with UNFPA, UN Women, and at the same time to make known the criteria when you talk about urban planning, you design the program on the ground, that the voice of the women or the girls are counted and they are at the table. I used to say that if you women are not at the table, you will be on the menu. You have to be on the table, at the table, not at the menu. Making a decision. So we just launched it last year, in June, but there's a long way to go. But actually, at least we started. So if you want to have more information on a women-led city, there are my colleagues here who will continue this work. There's Katarina here. You will continue this work. You can approach her because I will be leaving in 2 days' time. But this work is very, very much close to my heart. So I think maybe you also can join in how to look at how can we work together to increase the women participation in cities, especially in their decision making.
Can I prompt you? I think the other half of the question was about whether health is a part of that discourse in relation to women.
Sorry?
She also asked, is health part of that discourse about women-led cities?
Yes, of course. Education, health, and also housing, and also leadership in this, and also jobs. In terms of, it's in all categories. When you put the women-led cities in all categories, not only heading the cities. So if that's answer your questions, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The second one is about, the housing and the CHAM and the search and the bottom up and top bottoms and all that. Yeah, I mean you asked for the clear example. Let me give you one example when linked to housing. Yeah, we have 2 projects, housing project, one in Kigali, one in Senegal. And normally when we want, this is in slum area. And another one maybe if you have time permit is I just visited Sao Tome and Principe. And when you talk about housing, people don't want to relocate to another place because they already have the community, they already have friends around that. One example in Kigali, in Rwanda, when the first time that I went there, they were looking at us. You want to evict us? They said, no, we want to give you better home. This house is perfect for us. But when we discuss with them, we sit down and bring them together, even in the design of the house. And we said that we will relocate you temporarily to this block. We will do it, we will design together. I remember there are 2 sides of it. In the middle is a river. And the river, when I went there, was so smelly. And I said that, I'll give you the house. And not the design is not the back of the house is not facing the river, but the front of the house facing the river. So I said that let's design this together. And then, of course, it's very long process because people process is quite lengthy. But the moment we have we buy in, they have buy in with the ideas. They have we have the opportunity to build the trust. And the construction is very fast. And this engagement include the aspect of culture. That's why I said people-centered. Sometimes we know that we are architect. I will answer your question. We architect. We know better. We look into this design, that design, the technical part of it. Meaning that is we should design this way because it's facing north-south for the air circulation and all that. But sometimes we forget about the culture part. So when in Kigali, in Senegal, in Kigali, the house have 2 entrances. I said, why you need 2 doors? From the back is for my daughter and for the women. From the front is for my son and the boys. So I think, and then from that day onwards, there are another section of the slum say that, when are you coming to our place? Let's do it. We want to do it fast. You do it here for maybe 2 years. We want to do it within 1 year. So I think this is one example also. Another one is also on the public spaces. I would like to share with you our work inhabited in Kibera, in Dendora, in Nairobi. We managed to convert at least 12 open dam sites into public spaces, and they won the Dubai Award. We have the vision to give better quality of life, to be better public space, but bottom up, meaning that we engage with them and we tell them and we share with them and we share they also have a lot of ideas. So there are many examples where you can find from here, the building bridges. So and then the CHAM and the search in COP28, that is the first time that UN Habitat managed to work together with the COP28 president, and I'm also co-chair with Michael Bloomberg. The first time that we have local climate action summit, bringing in the local government, bringing in the mayors, bringing in the private sector, together in a room to discuss about climate change. The first time. And the second time we have the ministerial meeting of Ministry of Urbanization. That's where in COP27 we launched SURGE, Sustainable Urban Resilience for the Next Generation. That is the technical part. We put 5 areas of concern, of priorities. CHAM is the political part. I think there are already 64 countries signed for this CHAM. Is that like the coalition for high ambition is the political buy-in plus the technical. Hopefully that in COP29 we can also share the result of this. But of course, it's 12 months is very very fast. So I hope that you okay with the answer. And on the basic services and the role of private sector, we work very much with the private sector. That's why we have cities investment facilities. We launched it in in Abu Dhabi during World Urban Forum in the year 2000. In the year 2020, in Abu Dhabi. We include private sector. That's why we also launched the Sustainable Cities and Communities Foundation, working together with private sector. We cannot do it alone. UN cannot do it alone, and the member state cannot do it alone. We need to have, I always promote the principle of 4P, public, private, people partnership. But recently my colleague add another 1P, public, private, philanthropies, and people partnership. We need to work together with these 4 Ps or the 5 Ps. Otherwise, it's very difficult to implement any project. And the role of architect, of course, architect and planners. Architect, you are also not only dealing with the design. Now is the best time because what are the new design of a housing? We're using green model, green design, green material, and looking into the renewable energy and reducing the carbon emission. This is the opportunity to come out with a new innovation where architects play a very important role together with other professional planners and engineers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edie. I will ask you to give a round of applause, of course, in just a second, and we really are out of time, but I promised to ask a question from the person that actually posed this question online quite a long time ago, and it's a good one to finish on. And it's from Luai Ahmed in Syria, saying, Ms. Sharif, thank you for your inspiring work. Many Syrians who are generally well educated and keen to contribute positively face hurdles such as visa restrictions, banking challenges, etc. due to our nationality. What advice would you offer to Syrians to stay resilient and hopeful amidst these challenges? It's a chance to be inspiring again, and I think that's a good note to end on.
Thank you so much. As I said, that we should continue to aspire to inspire before we expire. So before we aspire today, this is, as you said, is a very good question. I think to me is that we should always be hopeful, at the same time trying to improve ourselves and to build up knowledge, to gain knowledge from time to time. I think we have to be hopeful. Doesn't mean that she or he is a Syrian. That's the end of the day. And for me, I'm also from the village. I'm from the poor family. I never thought that I'll be one day sitting here talking in front of you and sitting next to Michael. So I think that we must remain hopeful. At the same time, just to say hopeful, let God forgive me, but you have also to try harder to gain knowledge. At the same time, to me, is that you keep on gaining knowledge and build your network. I think that is important. The networking is very important in today's world, because through networking, then you can be introduced from one opportunities to another opportunities. And my last advice that, again, don't lose hope. Be hopeful. There will be a day that he or she can have the opportunity maybe to get a better place, or to join UN or to UN UCL or any other good places for him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maimunah, for an interesting, informative